be from insulin resistance. Also, inflammation. Inflammation is going to divert energy away from hormone production and processing and how those hormones work in the body. So this is where, and this is guys, this is where we get hit on two different areas, because the way this whole cycle works is your brain is the thermostat. It's always sensing what level of testosterone is floating around in your bloodstream. If your testosterone is low, your thermostat picks that up and it ramps up the signal to your testicles to make more testosterone. Okay. One of the problems is inflammation can affect your brain and your testicles both at the same time. So it affects the brain in that the brain can't detect as well the level of testosterone or estrogen floating around. And it also inhibits its ability to send that signal to your testicles to make more testosterone. So that's one effect. The other one is at the testicular level. It actually damages the Leydig cells, which are the cells in the testicles that make testosterone. So we can be hit on two different levels here at the same time, guys, just from inflammation. Concussions can kind of do that the same for the brain, or any sort of traumatic brain injury, can have that effect. So when we're talking about inflammation, this can be there for a number of reasons, right? It could be diet related. You could be eating this sort of standard American diet, lots of fast food, lots of highly processed oils, all those pro-inflammatory things, and not a lot of antioxidants in your diet. So not a lot of fruits and vegetables that sort of counteract those oxidative sort of elements. And so it can be from your diet. It can be from your lack of sleep. Lack of sleep is a stress on our body and can create inflammation as well. This is why sleep apnea is such a big issue with testosterone production. It could be environmental toxins like we were kind of alluding to earlier. Whether that's the stuff in your food, it's the plastics that you're coming in contact with throughout the day. Things like the receipts that you get from the grocery store, have BPA in them. The water bottles that we're drinking from. We're just inundated from, all over the place from these different types of toxins. Cleaning products that you use, personal hygiene products that you use. This is why you really want to use clean sources for all of those things. And then liver function. This kind of ties both of these back together. If your liver's not functioning well, again, you're going to be producing more of those inflammatory markers. You're going to be producing more binding products, more binding proteins. And then that's obviously functionally not going to allow your testosterone to be produced or function the way it's supposed to. So that's a little bit as far as insulin resistance goes. It gets a lot more detailed and in depth there, but this is sort of a cursory overview of how insulin resistance is going to affect your testosterone.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so funny. I love every time we talk, every single time, I'm like, this matches what we talk about. Because in Chinese medicine, you have the liver, the actual organ of the liver, but then you have the functional liver. And one of the things that the liver deals with is if you have a lot of stress, a lot of irritability, then it starts to cause a lot of these reactions. We always joke that the liver is the bully of the body in Chinese medicine because it bullies everything else. Mm-hmm. And so the liver will basically take over. You have this high stress, high cortisol, liver response. It creates heat, and heat can cause high blood pressure. It can, you can damage your kidneys from a Chinese medicine point of view, where your kidneys aren't going to function optimally because the liver kind of takes over. And you can look at it in the same way from a Western point of view, where it's like when this other stuff is taking over. It's like, okay, you have all this stuff, you're abusing your liver constantly, you're trying to detox constantly, you're constantly under stress, and all of a sudden your body doesn't care about, I need to lose weight, I need to balance my blood sugar, I need to have higher testosterone. Your body cares about, this thing is fight or flight, and it's screaming at me, and I need to take care of this now. And when you're running from a bear, we've said this before, when you're running from a bear, you are not thinking, I really want to digest and have sex and lose some weight. And your body's not not dealing with that. Your body's like, I am under stress right now. What do I need to do in this short amount of time? The problem is, in our society, is the short time never ends, because every single thing we do is stimulating this sympathetic fight or flight nervous system response. And so these systems in Chinese medicine, the liver, take over everything all the time because we give our body no choice. And then all of a sudden you tap into the diet part, and you're eating like crap, you're sleeping terribly, you're miserable at your job, you're sitting all day, all these different things. And then we're like, why can't I lose weight? Why can't I get my blood sugar under control? Why isn't my testosterone higher? Maybe if I take this pill, it'll be better. When really it's like this underlying issue where the liver in Chinese medicine is beaten up on everything else, and your body has no chance, it has no hope to be able to do this until you get that under control first. And so I really focus a lot on liver health, both, from a Chinese medicine perspective and just in general when I'm dealing with, anything. Somebody comes in with low energy, somebody comes in with, my cortisol levels are whack and I'm tired all the time. It's like, we're going to be working on the liver, we're going to be working on stress and bringing up that parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, and bringing down the sympathetic, that fight or flight.
Yeah, man, that was well said, but yeah, that's something I have to explain to guys often is, when our bodies are in survival mode, like this is how we've survived for so long as human beings, is to be very good at this. Its only thought is, how do we survive until tomorrow? It's not thinking about 2 weeks from now, 6 months from now, how we're going to live longer. It's just about tomorrow and and so we're going to give up certain things in the long term just to be able to survive till tomorrow. For instance, like procreation. If you are running from the bear, not a good time to have babies. So it's going to down-regulate all those processes that, involve procreation. So testosterone is part of that too. It helps to produce sperm as well. And so downgrading your testosterone production actually helps you prevent having a baby at the time, right? And so all these processes work together, right? And so we've got to sort of down-regulate that stress response, no matter where that stress is coming from, whether it's inflammation or insulin resistance, mental emotional stress, that happens a lot too. Guys get super stressed out. Obviously that sort of leads to a lot of other health issues like poor choices with their diet, not exercising enough, all that kind of stuff. But it can also, that mental emotional stress stresses the body out too. And your body sees all stress as the same thing. And when it gets signaled hey, this is a stressful environment, it kicks into survival mode. And so this is where, this is a really tough one, teaching guys how to meditate or pray or do some deep breathing exercises, do all those things that, you were talking about, stimulate your parasympathetics, that rest and digest part of your nervous system. That can be a challenge for sure.
Yeah, and a lot of guys definitely don't want to hear that. Especially I'm in the South. You don't have a lot of guys coming in as I really want to meditate more, and you just don't hear that. But I have a personal story really quick. Is when I was younger, my former wife and I were having a hard time conceiving, and I actually worked with you on this. And a lot of the stuff you told me I thought was just kind of silly. It's just oh well, you need to exercise more, you need to cut out these foods, stop microwaving and plastic. And I'm like, that's the silliest thing I ever heard. You're not giving me any real advice. Reduce your stress. And I was used to even though I was an acupuncturist, from your perspective, I was used to more of the Western model. That's the typical Western. And so all this was foreign, and it worked. And it worked great. And then the second baby was super fast, way faster than we expected, because the body, everything was lined up in the body and prepared. And it was so much easier. And it was just a whole bunch of small steps that you would look at as no medications, no, weird stuff other than just, sleep better, eat better, exercise, and stress less. And it worked. And now I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's just it. It's not easy, but it's a relatively simple process, right? So as we kind of leading into that, let's give some guys some practical ways of trying to improve these markers and things that we've been talking about. So I'll start with blood sugar. So this is where obviously like the best place to start is diet, right? And so you were talking about a Mediterranean style diet, which I think is a great example of a very well balanced diet. So I know a lot of guys like, or just people in general nowadays, they want to do the extremes, the keto diet, or the carnivore or something like that. Most of the time, these extreme diets are a big stress on the body. And if your body's already stressed, like that's the last thing we want to do. Plus, they're usually not sustainable. So we want to think long term here, right? And so try to simplify your diet as best you can. I love Michael Pollan's quote, about diet, how he simplifies it. He's like, just eat real food, mostly plants. And if you had to boil everything down, that's a pretty good place to start. But it's like lean meats. Get most of your fat from plants, not animals. So nuts and seeds, avocado, good oils, things like that. Lots of antioxidants, so fruits and vegetables. Watch the starchy stuff, especially if you've got blood sugar issues. So this is where simple sugars and even like the starchy stuff like corn and rice and all those sorts of things can be problematic, especially at the beginning, especially if you need to lose some weight, because it is all about insulin. And as long as your insulin levels are up there, and that's another lab that a lot of providers don't test for, and I would say try to push you to do, is get a fasting insulin done along with your other blood sugar markers. And that gives you a lot of insight, just because I've seen plenty of times where someone's A1C and their glucose will come back and it's totally normal, but you'll see their fasting insulin levels at like 15 or 20, which is on the high side. And then you'll see their triglycerides like at 120 or 150, which is on the high side. And it's like, oh, there's some indications there of some insulin resistance already starting. And we are starting to see like using those markers can give us insight into insulin resistance long before we actually call it that. And this can be years before we start calling it that, pre-diabetes or diabetes or whatnot. So it's like the name of the game here is kind of early detection, right? And making those changes to switch that process in the long term. So that's blood sugar. Mike, I'm curious from inflammation kind of standpoint, what would be your recommendations to sort of reduce inflammation?
Well, sleep. Sleep is a big one. Like, a minimum of 7 hours of solid sleep. And I'm not saying 7 hours where you lay in bed for an hour and then you finally fall asleep and then you wake up multiple times. Like if you can get 7, 8, 9 hours of solid sleep every night, that's a big deal. De-stressing, acupuncture is really good for that. There's herbs that are good for that. But really keeping your stress levels, manageable. We all have stress, but managing it well. A lot of guys don't want to hear this, but if you're not seeing someone, a counselor, therapist, somebody, it's really helpful. It doesn't have to be all the time, but guys don't focus enough on mental health. And it's helped my mental health a ton over the years. I'm not ashamed at all that I've seen a counselor for years, on and off, regularly, but sometimes more frequently, sometimes less. But anything to reduce that stress and to give yourself better tools, because really we're all going to have stressors. People are going to die in our lives. Bad things are going to happen. Car wrecks are going to happen. People are going to get hurt. And it really comes down to how you cope with it, because bad things are going to happen. How do you manage it? How do you cope with it? What are your tools? And if you don't have those tools, then you're going to have a really hard time. As far as diet, liver diet, we were talking about liver in Chinese medicine. So a big liver diet is lots of fresh salads, fresh vegetables. You want leafy greens with healthy fats with them, and some, vinegar or something along with that is going to be good, or lightly cooked vegetables are going to be good. Not a lot of corn. You mentioned this not a lot of corn or potatoes occasionally, but not all the time, because I've seen a ton of vegetarians with major issues because vegetarian to them means French fries all day and never a green vegetable in sight. So those are kind of the things that I would really push for inflammation, and then just keeping your immune system healthy, and good supplements, good food, good sleep. That's going to make a world of difference. You're going to feel better for it, and like you said, it doesn't have to be extreme, because we always want to go to the extremes. Like, well, I need to lose weight. I'm just going to eat red meat and have no fiber for the next 6 months. And oh, look, I lost all this weight. And you realize that you can't live like that. And you're super constipated all the time. And, like it causes its own problems. I'm not insulting the people who like carnivore. It definitely has benefits, but it can just be very difficult and hard on different parts of the body in the long term. And we don't have a lot of long-term studies on what these things do yet. And anytime I don't have long-term research on something new, I automatically have concerns no matter what it is. So,
yeah, I agree. The sleep part too, like that's huge. I think it's something like 40% of adults get 6 or less hours of sleep, and like that's terrible. And I mean, you saw this too when we were both in Alaska. There are a lot of guys up there who work for the mine. They work up on the slope. They have these rotating schedules where they may do night shifts and then day shifts, and it's like their schedule's never quite the same, and so their sleep patterns all over the place. And especially with the mine up there, like it was a no-brainer. Like I could tell you, within about 6 months of some guy working there, he was going to gain 20 pounds. His testosterone is going to drop a couple hundred points. He'd start developing some high blood pressure or sleep apnea or something. It's like there was just something that's going to happen metabolically just because of that kind of weird shift in their schedule.
I agree. I mean, when I worked third shift, it messed with my health in all sorts of ways because I wouldn't stay on third shift. So I would go back to normal schedule for a few days and then back to third shift. And it's just not good. It's not healthy. I mean, Chinese medicine's all about balance. It's like you want to balance your food. You want to balance, we're not saying never have a slice of pizza in your life or something. It's balance. It's like, how are you balancing all these things out? Yep. And then remembering that everything we do has a cost somewhere down the long run, at least if it's a habit. There's some cost for literally every habit that we have, and taking that into account, knowing the cost, and is it worth it to you for that cost?
Absolutely. I mean, the point here too is like you said, we're not trying to like prevent you from doing all these kind of fun things because it's life, right? We still have to have some fun too. But the idea is those are the exceptions, not the rule, right? And we want to improve our metabolic flexibility and sort of that adaptation, ability. So what that means is like we're going to be resilient to those stressors when we do have them. So if we're metabolically healthy, we can take on more of those stressors and our body can still function normally. So if you want to go, like for me, I love the occasional, whiskey with a good cigar with some buddies around a campfire. That's just like, that's fun. But it's not something I do, very often at all. But, trying to train myself to be more metabolic resilient and being able to take on that stress when it does happen and still function normally. Like, to me, that's a good life.
I agree. And, when I see people who are happy and healthy in their 70s, it's like, that's really good to see.
Yeah.
And they've still enjoyed their life. But they've also made a lot of healthy choices. And you see a guy that's in his early 70s that's functioning like a 55-year-old guy, and you're like, that's goals right there. Because a lot of guys, that's by the time they get to 70, they're like, well, I'm going to be dead then anyways. And it's like, no, it's like you can have a healthy, good lifestyle. I had a patient who was 92, who's in the gym 2 hours a day, that had bigger biceps than I did, and he felt great. He's like, little shoulder inflammation, otherwise I'm good. And it's like, yeah, those are goals right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just up on the mountain here last weekend, and I took the chairlift with a guy. He's 80 years old. He's up there, and he goes 2 or 3 times a week and skis, the mountain. And, he's just like, he's been doing that for years, and he's just, having a blast. So that's good. So I'm kind of curious. Let's So we've talked a lot about what's kind of look for. Um, what are some common mistakes that you see guys make? Especially when in relationship to testosterone or just kind of their metabolic health.
Well, I mean, right now, TRT is the big thing. It
Mm,
is the thing. It's also a good money maker if you want to see what medicine is doing, especially in America. Look at what brings in the money, and TRT brings in that money
yeah.
because you can just call these online labs. You don't. They a lot of them aren't verified. And again, I'm not insulting if you use them, but you don't have a lab that may necessarily be as trustworthy as you'd like. The blood collection is iffy on the little card or whatever, and you may be getting not very good numbers, and you just jump straight to TRT, and you don't think about anything else going on, any of the other effects. And like you said, it has side effects. You may already have poor numbers where what they measured wasn't a good number in the first place, and so you may not even know what you're adding to. And a lot of people don't realize like TRT is great when it's needed, and it's a big deal. It's something very, very big. And if you're putting that in your body, you better be working with a doctor and be very, very sure and
Hmm.
be monitored. That's the big thing I would say is be monitored so that you're actually
Yeah.
know where you're at and know that you're in a healthy place.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great point that you're only as good as the data that you're collecting, right? And so the decisions you're making are only as good as the data that you're collecting. And just a little FYI out there, guys, because I know there are a lot of those men's TRT clinics that are popping up all over the country. One of the issues that I have with them is, you can go in and you can get your testosterone checked right away. Like they'll have a number for you within like 20 minutes. The problem with that is the only way to do that is to use what's called an immunoassay. And we know compared to the gold standard, which is liquid chromatography mass spec, it can be as much as 20% lower than what the gold standard is. So you could be going in and getting a much lower number than what you should have. And sometimes they don't even like determine like if you want to go in the late morning or early afternoon when your testosterone is already starting to decline, they'll check you then too and say like, oh yeah, you've got low T. So there's not a lot of standardization for those kind of places and clinics. So I'd say like just buyer beware there because there are some gold standards when it comes to looking at these labs, and not all of those players like play the right way.
Exactly. And we already talked about this next one quite a bit. Or I talked about it earlier is like age.
Mm.
Like what is aging? The way we think about aging, and that has changed some because if you look at movies from the 80s, I'm going to show my age because I was born in 81. And if you look at movies from the 80s and you see a middle-aged guy in the 80s, like he looks ancient compared to now. So we have made some good progress as far as how people are progressing, but it's you're not doomed because you're getting older. Like it isn't like okay, you're just doomed to be miserable and everything's going to be terrible and bad things do happen sometimes, but
Yeah.
like it's just basic physiology. Like you can just work on things and make small changes over time and you're going to age better
Hmm.
than a lot of other people and much better than the previous generations if you do the right things. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. A lot of people are, big into sort of longevity and the anti-aging space and all that kind of stuff. And like, what medications, what supplements can I take to kind of slow the aging process down? But they're not really doing the foundational stuff, their diet and exercise and sleep and managing their stress, like all those things. So it's like, well, you can't, you're not going to supplement yourself out of bad habits, right? And so looking for a supplement out there or something quick and easy to overcome those foundational things, it doesn't exist. Maybe one day it will. We'll have an injection or a pill that'll do all that stuff for us, but right now it still boils down to all the foundational stuff. So I call it the core four. It's your nutrition, your exercise and activity, your sleep, and your stress. Like if you do those four things really well, you're way, way ahead of the curve.
Man, you're so right. I mean, and the supplements, it's become an addiction for some people. I really think
Yeah.
that there's an addiction to it. And I'm not saying all supplements are bad because I take some supplements. Some supplements are great. But like you said, you're not going to override what you're putting in your body all the time. And I tell people this with acupuncture. They come in and see me once a week or twice a week for 45 minutes, and they want me to fix everything. Just
Mhm.
fix me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can help you, but if you have chronic stress and you treat it terribly and you sleep terribly and you never move your body and you're sitting in a chair for 9 hours a day and you never stand up and you yell at your kids and then you drink a whole bunch and you pass out for 5 hours of poor sleep, there's not a lot that I can do in those 2 sessions a week. You just don't, like, I can help a little, but you're not going to see the same results because you can't overcome that. And then you start taking $150 worth of supplements a month or $300 worth of supplements a month, and you're still not seeing the results. And it's like, a lot of it, we overlook these small things because they seem simple, but they're hard. And instead, we want the easy pill. And if we do find that shot one day you talked about, I guarantee there'll be a cost we won't know about. It'll be 20 years down the road, and they'll be like, oh, and it causes rectal cancer, or like whatever comes out, and you'll be like, oh, I had no idea, because we've seen this
Yeah.
over and over again throughout our history of medicine.
Yeah.
We think something's safe, and then it comes out later that it causes problems. I mean, PPIs are a good example. Proton pump inhibitors, like, really good for acid reflux, increases your risk of heart attack and stroke significantly. Never
Mhm.
knew about it until recently.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like the more you can do without adding to it, the better.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Well put, man. Well
thanks.
put. So we want to kind of leave or end this on a high note, and we want to really challenge you out there. So I'd say, like, these things, like Mike was saying, like, these things are hard, right? They require some work. I think the best way to approach this is to try to create small habits that are moving you forward. And you don't have to do all this right now. You can start with small habits today and build on those habits over the next few weeks and months. And before you know it, as those habits become more ingrained, you're going to start to see some improvement. And that improvement is going to create momentum, move in the right direction. And that momentum is going to help you get to the next level, to help you level up and do more. And so this is a process. You got to think long game here. So I'd encourage you in the next 30 days, stop asking things like, how do I raise my testosterone, and start acting or asking more of like, how do I make my body safe and stable and efficient enough to produce testosterone? What are some of the obstacles that are in the way of my body producing testosterone, like too much insulin, too much stress, lack of sleep, inflammation, all those sorts of things. So start tracking things like your energy, your sleep, maybe your weight, your waist circumference, your blood sugar, whatever that may be. Start with just a few simple things that you can start tracking, that you can see, how well that they're moving. Go in, if you haven't had labs done, look around, contact us. We can help you find somebody locally, or we do telehealth as well. We can help you with those labs as well, and get you like started down the right track at least. But do something like here in the next 30 days,
Yes.
just a few simple steps. Start moving in the right direction.
Man, I agree completely. And if you need support, definitely reach out because we do help. And honestly, one thing at a time. If you feel like this is all way too much, then start with one.
Yeah.
Start with, I'm going to sleep. I'm going to go to bed at 10:30 p.m. or 11 p.m. and I'm going to have good sleep hygiene before. That means turn off your phone, turn off your TV, read a book, and then plan on going to sleep then. At first it'll be hard and you'll lay in bed and you're like, this is dumb. And eventually you'll start falling asleep then, and you'll start waking up at the same time. You'll fall asleep at the same time, you'll wake up at the same time, and you'll notice, oh, I feel better. And then once you have that habit, then add the next habit. And the next habit will be, I'm going to, up my vegetables to 2 a day. I'm going to start out really small. Let's say you eat 0 vegetables a day. You never eat a vegetable. Now you're going to eat 2 servings a day. Start simple, because you don't have to be like, I don't want to eat 6 servings of salad a day. It's like, no, just start morning and night, green leafy vegetable or something that doesn't spike blood sugar, something that you can do. And
Mm-hmm.
then bite off a little at a time. And if you make these changes, make one change a week until it becomes a habit, or every 2 weeks, then all of a sudden next year, you're a different person.
Yeah.
Different person completely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. It reminds me when I was in med school, we were doing clinical rotations, and I set in with this one patient. It was just he was a train wreck. I mean, he was severely obese, was on a ton of medications, had 2 autoimmune conditions, type 2 diabetes. Like he was just a train wreck. And I remember walking out and talking to my supervisor at the time, and I was like, man, I don't know where to start with this guy. It's like, there's so much we should do. And I'm worried about just overwhelming. And my supervisor was just said the same thing you just said. Start really simple. Just start with just one thing right now. Have him come back in 2 weeks. And then once he's done that, you add one more thing. So we started with water because he was severely dehydrated too. So we just tried like, hey, let's drink 80 ounces of water every day. That's your only goal for the next 2 weeks is just do that. And I was really kind of dumbfounded by what happened after that because he came back in 2 weeks and had already reported, hey, I'm sleeping better, like my energy's better through the day. So we added like a certain level of steps, the next time, and then every 2 weeks he would come in, we would add or tweak, one more thing. And the change that he experienced in 6 months was, I mean, unreal. He dropped 40 pounds. The guy, like, he didn't look like the same guy anymore. And we were able to get him off quite a few of his medications. And it was 6 months, right? 6 months in the grand scheme of things is nothing, right? But it took those little baby steps, over that period of time in order to get there. And so, like I said, like great point. You just got to start with those baby steps and work your way up.
Yeah, it's true. I love stories like that. And, sometimes it doesn't take much. Personal story for me is I used to be, 350 pounds. Like I was a healthy boy, as they say in the South. I was a healthy boy. And I was drinking, 2 liters of soda a day in the morning. I was like, that's my breakfast. I would just chug a surge soda as much as I could of 2 liters, and that would be my breakfast. And just tired, felt horrible. And I got into Kung Fu, and the teacher was a jerk, terrible. But he ended up being great. If he's listening, I love you, Sifu. But at the time, he was a jerk because that's what I needed. But honestly, I just changed one habit. He didn't say, like, cut out the soda. He didn't say anything else. He just said, you're going to start coming to Kung Fu multiple times a week, and you're going to work hard. And that's where I started. And it kind of started my whole health journey, how I got into this medicine, everything else. And it all started with just one thing with one guy. And then eventually I cut soda out completely because I realized, hey, it's not serving me very well. So I cut it out. And like all these little habits just kept compounding from this one starting step. So take the first step. If you need support, let us know, but take the first step and the rest of the steps will come along and you're going to feel better for it. I don't care if you're 80 right now listening or if you're 18. These are steps you need to take now. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, man. All right. Well, anything else you got, Mike, to kind of
no,
wrap?
this was as usual an awesome show. I love the new format's going to be great. We're going to be eventually having guests on. It's just going to be really good. You're going to get to see a lot of really good clips, and we're really looking forward to helping you. We do this show for you guys, for everybody listening. There's not enough good content for men and men's health out there, and we're going to change that starting now. We're going to change that. So keep tuning in and just get excited.
Yeah, we're really excited about what this year's, has forward. Like we've planned this out. We've got some guests coming on. We're really changing things up a little bit. But yeah, the whole purpose here is just to educate you guys so that you can make better decisions about your health and just like, again, kind of forge a new you. Like this whole idea of a forge and transformation, right, is sort of the idea that we have here. And so if you have questions, if you have guests that you want us to bring on, please reach out. We'd love to just do what we can to serve you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks, Dr. May. As usual, great job.
All right, Mike. Appreciate it, man. Have a good week. We'll see you
Hey, you
guys
too.
next month.